Hi guys, we're here today with Jess and Ian from Property Technologies. We're going to have a chat to them about the importance of sustainability and energy efficiency and why you guys out there, builders and homeowners, architects, designers, should be getting guys like these involved in your projects earlier on. So Jess and Ian, tell us a little bit about what it is you guys do and the benefits that clients can have from using a company like yourself.
Right, well, Property Technologies has been involved in sustainable building design since the early 80s. We started in 85 and we've watched all the different facets and what would you call them, the jargon and trends over all this time. And we're now at a stage where sustainability is the key word that's being thrown around, not energy efficiency. That's because people have started to realise that not only do we need energy efficiency, but when we put something in to gain that energy efficiency, it should be a sustainable product. So we don't spend $10,000 on insulation that's going to give us very little benefit in the house and certainly hurt the sustainability of society by manufacturing that. Now that's a holistic type of attitude or trend. And in fact, with the new Green Star movement, we're finding things like in commercial buildings, 3 times outside air equals something that gives you a point where it costs us more energy to treat that air and bring it down to a comfortable level. So sustainability really is in the eye of the beholder. If it's your house, I would think you'd want it to run at a very economic rate. I would think you'd want it to be comfortable. You wouldn't want all of the sort of VOX, which are the odours and that from bad, cheap products put in there, but you wouldn't want to overspend either. So to get to that sort of level, you need to take the base design, go through a checklist and get a professional to do it or a highly trained individual to do it, and then come up with recommendations to put back into the project group so you can all study it together before the final pen lines are drawn on the architectural drawings. Yeah. And that's where we fit in now, looking at the air conditioning, the lighting, the thickness and type and insulation factors of the walls, roofs and slab. Look at things like now you'd be putting in a lot of cellars and things like this, refrigerated cold rooms in domestic houses, large ones. Where they go in the building can be very important. If we can get them in the centre, with a big mass around them, they're going to take less to keep down at that temperature and less insulation. Put it on the west side, forget it. Yeah. So that's where we come in, looking at what the architect and the client is trying to achieve and trying to drive it in a sustainable manner.
Yep.
Yeah, and Property Technologies as building services engineers, we in-house here in these offices, we do the electrical, we do the mechanical, we do the hydraulics, and they're the 3 biggest energy users in any home. So you can choose sustainable products, you can choose all this, but it's how the home works, how the home operates is, your biggest factor in your ongoing costs. And as engineers, a big thing we all learn at university is, life cycle analysis. And, we have to go through that. And it's the cost to create a product, it's the cost to integrate a product, to use a product, and then eventually how that product breaks down. And so by being able to control those services and have, a finished example for the services, and then working with the builder and the designer in the orientation of the home and the actual building fabric of the home, we've got computer simulation programs that will actually spit out how much energy your house will use in a year. And, we can compare, well, if we do this, what energy will that home use, as opposed to, if we move the home, over here and turn it, will that be a better option? Or, sometimes you need less windows, less shading. Sometimes you need more shading. It just depends on, where the house is situated and what you're trying to achieve. So that's, I think, what getting engineers involved early on in the project can really benefit long term.
Yeah, look, I'm a pretty big believer. I think we get misled a lot in the industry. A lot of it comes down to costs. But I think in residential especially, this sort of stuff gets left out completely 9 times out of 10, unless it's in a multi-million-dollar home. And I think this sort of stuff's very important and should be getting used in lesser value homes. But one thing that sort of annoys me a little bit, like in Australia especially, you seem to just have to pay the certifier to do this, or an energy guy to do this $200 or $300 assessment. He ticks and flicks a few items. You put some solar panels on and a bit of insulation in the walls, and you've got an energy efficient house.
Or an extra outdoor fan.
Or an extra fan.
It's a,
So I think, like, why do you think that is that we have to have such a minimal standard in the industry?
Well, I think the industry decided as a whole that we needed a base level, and we needed to appear to be sustainable, and appear to be is the big words. The Building Code of Australia has its minimum standards, and the building code's our Bible. That's what we need to achieve, but there are better ways to do it. And so basically it's a business model for certifiers and energy efficiency assessors to be able to do these reports as cheaply as possible, and then they can do lots of them. Whereas we'll be a bit more balanced in our approach, where we'll look at the whole factor of it and actually give some feedback and give some advice and get a better product at the end. It does cost a little more, but when you weigh that up against 20 years of energy bills in your home, it's
just to take a step back on the commercial side of things. This was forced into the industry. Before it was forced into the industry, people didn't care what sort of walls they put up, or the cheapest window frames and mullions they could put in. Who cares about the heat transfer and all that? So this was a method under the Section J of the NCC of saying, you guys are going to meet these areas. So once again, certain developers and builders and that got together and started pushing it down to get it signed off and through, and do the minimum they could. Okay, so there is an industry out there that does the tick and flick, and they're designed for that. They sit in that. Our opinion, they should be outlawed, but that's not going to happen. Then you've got another group who are engineers and actually do the Section J, do the modelling, allow the builder and the architect to choose their fabrics and build the wall, and then we test it with computer simulations. A lot more work than tick and flick and saying it just meets it, but a lot better outcome for the building, for the final building owner. And often builders are surprised. The wall's cheaper. The facade's cheaper to build, and if you translate that from commercial to a residential, and they're not all that different. You've got windows, you've got walls, you've got external, internal, you've got your building fabric, and you apply the same thing. You've got that same little industry there who are doing the $300 tick and flick, or then you can go and spend a couple of $1,000 and do a proper analysis on it and do a life cycle costing over 15 years. See what happens there.
And it's important to realise we're not talking tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking a couple of thousand compared to $300, which is significant, but not in the big scene.
But I think another big misconception is everyone wants sustainability. They want energy efficiency, and they all just see dollar signs. And I know myself, being a builder, like you do. As soon as you hear that, you think it's going to cost dollars. And like a few years ago, that was the way I thought. But like I'm a big believer in collaboration. I think that definitely helps our industry and helps our clients get a better end result. And I believe that if designers and architects are giving their clients the option of going to people like yourselves very early on, and it's actually worked into the design and the building from the very beginning, 9 times out of 10 it won't cost more. If anything, it might be slightly, but if everyone is working on the same page towards the same goal, we know the products we're using. In the old days, or even a few years ago, I think a lot of this stuff didn't get considered until the building was started, and then it was costing a lot because you were retrofitting things before you'd even finished a building.
The subby had already given you a price, and here you were changing it. Let's go the variation.
So, like, if people collaborate and get you guys involved from the beginning, like, there's massive benefits, isn't there?
There is. Look at the building services inside there. Look at the lighting. Look at the air conditioning. Even the water, if depending on whether you're in a rural job or semi-rural, the septic system and all of that, you can tie all of these up with one computer system. If you don't tie them up with one computer system, you'll often end up with 3 different systems. It doesn't take much of a genius to work out that one well-programmed system will give this client, he'll be able to walk in and do all of the things that you see advertised. He'll be able to use his smartphone and get the air conditioning on before he gets there. He'll be able to get the mood zone lighting, how he wants it. He'll be able to get his security on and see what's going on in his yards anywhere in the world. Yeah. Inside the house, it would be alarmed and straight back to him, and then straight back to wherever he wants to do. All from one little system.
Yeah.
And it's not a engineered thing. It's a proprietary system that you'll go and select for that particular job and set it up.
Yeah.
But can you have an air conditioning subby working with an electrician, working with a plumber, all they're on site working. Where's their time, particularly in the smaller industry, the domestic, where's their time to put it all together? So all of a sudden you end up with 3 different systems and probably a third more cost.
No, I'm a big believer in that. I think, like I said, collaboration's a huge thing, and I think we need to push to get it happening a lot more. But another thing, I think this definitely stirs a few of the bigger players up, but like everyone is also, I think, misled with all these new master plan housing estates. They set up these estates, they put these display villages in, and the houses in that display village are designed absolutely perfectly for the block of land they're setting on. The client comes in, they fall in love with the house, they choose that house on a block of land somewhere else in the estate. Straight away the house fails because it hasn't been designed for that block of land. So what do you guys, how do you guys feel about that?
I think it's important to consider all factors when you're siting a home, and it happens too often. You not only lose the feel of the home in, you'll have this display home on a corner block that feels amazing. You don't only lose that when it's all of a sudden put on one of the streets in the community, but you lose your orientation, you lose your all of your passive features of the home. So your general airflow, your daylight factors, all that sort of thing, and that's all stuff that we take into account when modelling. And if you really love that house and you really love this block, take it to an engineer, take it to a professional, and get a couple of things tweaked, and you can still have all the benefits of that home. Maybe with a couple of windows changed, or stuff like that. So some
overhangs and different position of windows.
I don't think the world should be a one size fits all. Every home's different for a reason. That's why we like them, and it can be a bit boring if you have rows and rows of the same house.
We're not structural engineers. The first thing you say is when they move the house is the geotech has to be done. The footings change straight away. The orientation changes. The sun, the way it passes over the home, as you say, overhangs, types of windows, mullions, glass type. All of this should be looked at. Now, glass is not glass. Glass all sheets of glass perform differently. And if you just go and take that display home and whack it over there and don't change anything, all of a sudden you can have all the stuff designed for the west-east scenario on the display home suddenly ran on the south side of the block you've put it on, and the thing doesn't work. If in fact it worked in the first case, because we never saw the figures on it, we just saw it was a good landscape block and a good looking house. That brings me to another thing on these displays. You always walk in and the lights are fantastic and all of this. There is no Australian standard for the lighting in a domestic house, so it pretty much comes back to you're depending on your electrician or your experience as to what you put in, and that can be a good thing, or you can go back to an engineer or even a lighting specialist and get them to run it through an actual lighting program, and you can see what your house is going to perform like. You can see zones, you can see how you should be trying to switch it. All of this needs to be considered, and often it isn't.
It all a lot of this stuff just gets thrown out the window, and like with all the shows on TV now and everyone seeing all this stuff, like I said earlier, everyone wants sustainability, they all want energy efficiency, but I don't think anyone, or most people, don't actually understand what it is. Like, it goes far more than just the design of a home. Like you touched on earlier, it's about the manufacturing of the product and where it comes from, what it's made of, how it gets used, how it gets installed. There's so much more to consider, and
its impact on the environment and any vox it gives off in the house and all sorts of things. And
so like there's so many builders out there that just like advertise or market these options for people, but there's no thought put into it. Like it just gets thrown in. So
Here's your free air conditioning.
It sounds nice, and that's what it comes down to. And it is a great thing that we do have a minimum standard for sustainability, or for energy efficiency. It is a good thing, don't get me wrong, but a lot more can be done. And it's more than just putting bats in the wall or bats in the ceiling and stuff like that. So that's really important. I had discussions recently with one of the framing supply companies and with metal framing and dealing with thermal breaks, and how can we overcome some of the energy efficiency with thermal breaks. And steel framing's becoming more and more popular because we're surrounded by termites. And there are ways to overcome some of the building challenges with that by using a proper modelling program, taking into account the actual lights that are going in the house, the actual services going in the house. And even if you're not looking at a fully sustainable home, as far as meeting it needs an R2.8 wall or whatever. We've found that some homes with an R1.4 wall, if they've got better lighting systems, better air management systems, they can actually perform better than a home with an R2.8 wall. So it comes down to there are options and flexibility for the builder, flexibility for the developer, and flexibility for the homeowner in getting
the architect.
And the architect in getting a product that works.
So it really comes back to that collaboration again, like creating a team. Like I'm a big driver for creating a team right from the beginning, so that the homeowner finding a builder, finding an architect or designer, and working together. Like really, for people to get an energy efficient, sustainable home, like you guys or a company like yourselves needs to be part of that team, so that the architect or designer can be running ideas backwards and forwards, and you guys can be saying, "Yep, that's going to work. That's not." But because it's more like it's like you just said, it's the way it actually goes together as well. So, like just throwing the highest rated insulation in a wall might not make any difference whatsoever, but
doing that in some areas will actually increase the energy use of the home. So you've got to take into account where the home's situated as well.
So we were talking about just earlier. So these guys actually did a design for a big house we did. We finished about 18 months ago, and we really saw how using a company like these guys can benefit the clients in achieving a comfortable, livable home. And one of the things on that project was it was actually we had to actually shrink some of the overhangs, didn't we? Because it worked too well in winter.
In winter we had to put heating in.
And
And that was not desirable. So by cutting them back, reduce the amount of materials, reduce the energy for winter running. I think that particular project, we also looked at the type of walls that you had and the insulation. There was a very environmentally driven couple that did the job, and they wanted to go to the top of the tree insulation in the walls, and they asked Duayne for that. We modelled it, and it came back, and the extra cost for this insulation actually did nothing for the performance of the house. And yet if you go back to the environmental sustainability bit, the cost of making and putting the actual insulation in was a backward step for sustainability of the house. But that being said, they wanted to have the maximum insulation they could in the house. Didn't hurt the job for putting that in, so it went in. But the door, that double door, this particular project, someone had sold the idea of an argon-filled, double-glazed, huge sliding door to the exterior. After we modelled it, it wasn't required, so that was quite a major saving for no loss of ongoing energy performance. Which brings us to another thing. When we go and we model these houses and look at them, what we try and do is picture how they're going to be used down the track and set them up so they can be zoned. So you use this part of the house and then you use that part of the house. Particularly in the bigger houses, it's very important. What sort of air conditioning are these people going to have? All rooms in use at once with a big family, or is it just a couple who want 4 or 5 spare bedrooms and that sort of thing? We go through with the owner or the future owner, the builder, the architect, and we try and simulate how they're going to operate the place. And that also is a big saving, on the ongoing front. What else do we do with these things? The sound systems, the lighting systems, all of these sort of systems, by being involved, we can get them all installed by the one set of subcontractors instead of having all of these piecemeal things and going to specialist controls companies and that.
Yeah.
We can bring them in and they're actually in the domestic price market. You're not going out to a commercial controls person. You're going to someone down at the local contractor store who's got the components. We've put the system together. They can get the whole thing to run, and all of a sudden they've got it zoned, and off it goes, and it's working.
Yeah, so it's really coming back to like everybody, the builder, designer, architect, like everybody involved need more education, and it's really sounding like the more that people educate ourselves on the benefits of these, and if it's worked in from the beginning, the house could actually be cheaper.
Well, not only
More
that, though.
technologically sound, anyhow. So,
Yeah.
But not only that, it might be cheaper to build, but will definitely be cheaper to run. And I think more and more, and with energy prices becoming what they are, people are, becoming more and more focused on, well, what's this going to cost me in 10 years' time or in 5 years' time?
Yeah.
I know myself, I'm putting a swimming pool in. So when I do that, I'm putting in solar panels, because I don't want to be paying for the cost of running that. So, people are more focused on that long-term thinking, or well, I'm hoping the world's coming around to more long-term thinking. Who knows?